Hi everybody, Mischa here with Word of the Day, and there it is, Draconian. What does this adjective draconian refer to? Draconian means that it usually refers to laws or punishment. Sometimes these days it can also apply to government overreach, such as, and also one of my pet peeves, zero tolerance policies, where you end up with a punishment that in no way fits the crime. It's really disproportionate. It's way too much. That is what draconian means. Now, where does it come from? Well, this word is actually what we call an eponymous word, in that it's named after somebody. In this case, the fellow's name was Draco, and he was the lawgiver, the legislator who created the Constitution and the codified laws of Athens in the 7th century BCE, because Athens was a mess. They had two really serious problems going on. One was that, shockingly, there were a small number of extremely wealthy people, a big wealth gap, and everybody else who was getting kicked around. And they also had no codified legal system. There were no laws on the books. And so everything would end up in blood feuds and violence, with poor folks really getting the sticky end of the stick on it. So Draco was approached to write a constitution and codify the laws, which he did. And in fact, Athens really did calm down. However, 700 years later, when Plutarch was writing about Draco, basically he said, look, the problem was that he gave you the death penalty for everything. If you killed somebody, you got the death penalty. But if you stole a cabbage, you got the death penalty. That was actually the example that Plutarch gave. Stealing a cabbage would get you the death penalty. So this idea of punishments that are really disproportionate and unfair and don't fit the crime, it comes from this fella, Draco. And we use the word draconian. Now, when does it come into English? 1876. And in a kind of a strange way. I've never come across a person quite like this. His name was Charles Davies. He was a Church of England, Anglican, priest. He was a spiritualist, and he was a religious reporter. And what he would do would be, he would go all over London, and he would go to these little churches which were dissenters, or they weren't obeying all the orthodox rules of the Church of England, which was the official church. And so he would report on these interesting little churches, and so the Church of England could decide, are they too far off that they're really dissenters, or can we keep them in the fold somehow? Well, I'm paraphrasing Charles Davies here, but basically he goes to this little place called the New Church of Jerusalem, stays for a service, and says, yeah, it was really nice. They were kind of loosey-goosey, if you know what I mean. But, on the other hand, we Church of England folks can be kind of draconian. And that's when it comes into English, just in time, because in 1876, it's the height of the Victorian period, and that means colonization, imperialism, and of course, the British were always going after Ireland in some pretty brutal ways, quite draconian. So they needed the word. Over time, we apply it to government overreach, policies that are made by governments, economic policies, as being way too harsh, way too punitive. So how can we use it today? I'll give you 3 examples, okay? First, Lucy was very upset when her parents took her phone away until she finished her homework. "Oh, you're so draconian," she cried. That's a true story, by the way. Or how about this? Zero tolerance measures or policies are always draconian. Because, for example, I'm going to give you an example here, a true one. a girl goes to high school to class one day. She brings her mother's car. Her mother, she's going to be the valedictorian also. But in the back of her mother's car is a box of stuff from the kitchen, which includes cooking sherry. But campus has a zero tolerance policy for alcohol on campus. And so the draconian measure they took was to expel her. Okay, true story. And finally, draconian really expanded in English after the pandemic because of what some people consider draconian measures to keep people safe, especially at the beginning when we didn't quite know what was going on. And as much as people complain here, here's what happened in China. This is just one story. In a city of 11 million people, they had 3 positive tests for people who actually didn't have symptoms. They closed the city down, they made people stay in their houses, and a lot of people starved to death. This was a draconian measure. Okay, that's draconian, that's how you use it. And let's say you want to read that Plutarch guy, this guy, Plutarch's Lives. He's the one who told us about Draco, page 117. There's a lot of good stories in there. But if you're going to buy Plutarch's Lives, not from the big boys. We're going to support independent booksellers, and by clicking above or below at bookshop.org/shop/word of the day, and I'll see you later.